Hello my fellow designers, welcome back to D-Life HD. This is Victor, and today we're going to be reviewing the new Monster Hunter movie that just came out, and oh boy, this is going to be quite the review that I have for you guys. So without any further delay, let's jump right into it. Man, well, if you've been watching my videos leading up to Monster Hunter Rise, you will know that I am a huge fan of the series. It's one of my favorite franchises, not only in video games, but of all time, because it has this wonderful world to explore and fantastic culture. I just love the world building within the game. It makes me feel immersed, and there aren't a whole lot of games that really get me to that level of immersion. And so, when I heard that there was a Monster Hunter movie coming out, I was extremely excited. Now, I didn't hear about this movie recently with the trailers. I've actually been following it for a long time, almost 5 years to be exact. There was first some test footage that was shown in a bunch of articles that went out when it first was in pre-production and they were beginning to work on the film, and so leading up to the release, I was really excited, hoping that this would be one of the better video game movies and that they'd be able to pull off something fantastic. Because hey, they've already got lots of awesome story to work with because of the games. The world is fantastic, so even if they branched out and did their own thing, they surely would do a fantastic job. But unfortunately, along with the first trailer and the first wave of disappointment, this film pretty much disappoints in every regard. I don't have many positive things to say about it. Usually, I'm a pretty optimistic person when it comes to movies. Even if it's a newer film that I don't like, I can still find something to point out and be excited for, and maybe come back to it and appreciate it next time I go ahead and watch it again. But I don't know if there will be a second time that I will watch this Monster Hunter movie, because there was purely nothing to like about it. What makes the film so odd is it's not only trying to appeal to a fan base, you know, the long-term fans of the series like myself, but it's also trying to appeal to a Western audience that honestly doesn't even understand the franchise. When the trailer first dropped for this movie, it was clear that what they were going for was super odd. The story is not really traditional in the sense that you have American army soldiers being transported from Earth to the Monster Hunter world. And honestly, this story element is the least of the problems within the film. It is super uncomfortable and barely makes sense, and honestly, it just makes every single character from the beginning of the film that's from Earth feel super expendable, and just no character development is gone into it. Especially considering most of these American soldiers that we learn about at the beginning of the movie die within the first 20 minutes of the film. It's terrible. They're trying to go for a Jurassic Park feel when that's not really what Monster Hunter is. Although you do go out and specifically try to hunt these giant wyverns and dragons and more dinosaur type monsters, that's not exactly how the monsters react the way they portrayed them in the film. Sure, they will defend themselves and attack you, but if you're not specifically going out to attack this monster, they're not necessarily just going around to eat everybody. They made it seem like the Diablos, who is an herbivore and not really a hunter, was out there to just destroy every single person. And it just really subtracted from what I love about the franchise and the creation of these monsters and the realism of them, because they tried to make them into more of these just destructive creatures that you might see in other types of kaiju or monster movies. Another confusing thing was the release date of this movie. Every single different site that I checked said it was coming out at a different time leading up to its release. Finally, I think everybody got on the same page. My guess is that they were planning to release it earlier, and then because of COVID, they might have just delayed it, and then everybody just wasn't sure when it was coming out, and so the launch was just so rocky, and I could tell that the core audience, you know, the people who love the franchise, they probably were following it, but the audience that they were really trying to lean into grasping, which was more of this Western audience that loves action movies, they're not invested in this franchise. So the fact that they didn't have like a concrete release date for this film just made it so odd. And I doubt that this American audience that they were trying to reach really knew when this film was coming out. And to that point, there were only 5 people in the theater, including me and my friend that I brought along with me to watch the movie. And the other 3 people, I talked to them directly before the film started, and they didn't even know what Monster Hunter was. They didn't even know it was a video game until I told them that it was. They just liked monster movies, and so they were coming to see it. So the fact is, maybe like just a few people here and there who like monster movies would come and see it, but the general audience that they were trying to reach probably was not following it, especially considering how jumbled the release schedule really was. The story can be summarized so easily. American army soldiers get warped to the Monster Hunter universe, and they're trying to reach a tower that has a portal so they can warp back. That's as far as it goes. It's utterly ridiculous. There's no real motivation behind the investment of the user, the people that are coming to watch it. There's no real reason to care about these people because the story is so flat, and we've seen it a million times in other things. There are awesome stories that the Monster Hunter franchise has. Things like traveling to the New World and World, or the Frenzy virus from Monster Hunter 4. It's just they could have leaned into these stories, but instead they tried to go for something so bland that I was honestly kind of bored out of my mind the entire time I was watching the movie. Not to mention the terrible acting. Holy cow. All the actors, except for Tony Jaa, who played the Hunter character, they were terrible. Even Ron Perlman, his character was just bad, and it didn't fit who he was as an actor. It just felt so jumbled and odd. And also, we had characters from Monster Hunter World and Iceborne in the movie, but they didn't really talk, and they didn't really have a place. They kind of just showed up at the end of the movie. Because, and this might be a light spoiler, the majority of the movie takes place in one setting. The army people get transferred over to Monster Hunter World. Most of them die, and except for this one female lead character. She meets a hunter, and they're trying to get past the desert. The majority of the film is set in the desert, and them trying to get past a Diablos who's blocking their way. It felt like some kind of fever dream where I just couldn't move, and it just, there's so much depth to the world building of Monster Hunter. There's so many awesome locations that they could have chosen, but instead they went for a generic Star Wars style desert and made you be in this part of the world for almost the entire movie. Then they moved on to a jungle section, and then that was basically the end of the movie. So it's laughable. Honestly, I was laughing the entire time in the theater. I'm not even kidding. Not just at the acting, and not just at the terrible world. It was also the soundtrack, which was so oddly placed. It sounded like Tron. You had these monosynths and like these climbing type songs that just did not fit the style. What do you think of when you think of a desert or a jungle? You know, you think of beating drums and that kind of style of music. But no, they went for a fully synthesized song that basically looped the entire movie. It was so weird. It felt like it belonged in Tron, like I said earlier. And I love Tron, and I love Tron Legacy's soundtrack. I'm a huge Daft Punk fan, but it just did not fit the movie. I don't know who greenlit that, but I was laughing the whole time because the soundtrack just broke from the immersion. And that's one of the worst parts of the movie, because I love music, and Monster Hunter has a huge catalog of awesome songs. Not to mention, the main theme of Monster Hunter was never used in the movie. I never heard it one time, and it's a fantastic, awesome song, and they should have just dropped it in there somewhere, even if it was synthesized. Just give the fans something. Oh, brother, this has more so been a rant, and it's going long here, so I'm going to conclude with a small portion that my friend who got to come along with me and watch it in the theater wrote. So without any further delay, here is Micah Ferguson's piece on the movie. Between the cringe-worthy dialogue, mediocre acting, and non-existent character development, forced story, and mismatched soundtrack, This film gets a 9 out of 10 for me if I'm rating it on its wasted potential. In addition to those offenses mentioned above, this film strayed completely from the Monster Hunter aesthetic, feeling more like a poor remake of Kong Skull Island than an original film from a unique franchise. Instead of watching hunters hunt down mystical beasts and a fascinating medieval type world on vast, lovely landscapes, prepare to watch modern soldiers run from vicious beasts in a desert for the first 2/3 of the film. The chase scenes are full of rapid cuts that make them hard to follow and are cliché to an unprecedented extent. The best part of the first 65% of the film is laughing at pathetic jump scare attempts. The only pro that can be found in this film was, as one might expect, the CGI of the monsters. I mentioned that the characters of the monsters do not feel true to the game. They are savage, bloodthirsty beasts who only have one goal: to kill the protagonist. They lose the wild animal, natural, circle of life feel from the games. The CGI, though, on a few monsters we do get to see is borderline perfect. It's obvious where the vast majority of the budget for this film went. It's an entertaining piece of work, I suppose, especially for those who aren't familiar with the franchise, but as a fan of the game and of films that break the mold, this is an absolute disappointment. There you have it, guys. A review and a little outro done by two Monster Hunter fans. Just roll the outro clip. I can never touch this movie again. I'm done. Thank you for watching. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Let us know in the comments down below what you thought of this video. We love talking to you guys. Remember to like and subscribe for more videos like these. Lastly, check out our Twitter account for gameplay on the latest releases. But most importantly, remember to stay 1 up.